Assalamu alaikum and welcome to another episode of the Science of Soul podcast. Today I am very pleased to announce that I was joined by a good friend, a very old friend. I mean, we've been friends since we were kids. Robert Johnson, who is a businessman, an entrepreneur, a father, someone who has an amazing story of transformation, overcoming lack of confidence and dyslexia and learning difficulties to now becoming a very successful business person, almost like a business guru to some of us. And in this episode, we talk about really, really important things. Like, for example, in this current climate of the pandemic, where a lot of people might be worried about what their future is looking like in terms of work, in terms of business, he gives some great advice that is universally applicable and really, really useful. So I think this would be a really important podcast for anyone who might be struggling with anxiety about what the world's looking like right now. And we also cover some of the, I think, important areas of ethics and morals which influences my life. And Robert's not so much of a religious person, but it's amazing to see how a lot of these things sort of transcend any one religion and how these things are universal values. So I hope you guys enjoy. Before we get to the podcast, I will ask you very kindly, please like and subscribe to this video if you're listening on Apple or Google Podcasts or on Spotify. Follow us, subscribe to us, leave us a review because it will really help us spread this podcast to people who would really benefit. All right, enjoy the show. How are you doing, my friend?
I'm good. I'm very well, thank you very much. It's end of the week. It's been a long week, but yeah, I'm good, man. Thank you very much for reaching out. It's great.
Well, no, actually, thank you for taking the time. I know you're really busy. I can actually see your to-do list in the background. It's looking kind of busy. And
Yeah.
are you in the new studio now? New
No,
studio, new office.
no, this is kind of the new world, yeah. So I'm actually in my father-in-law's office. So this is a builder's construction office. This has nothing to do with. But he's very well. We're having work done on the house now, so I'm just come here to find somewhere quiet to work, really. So it'll do. It'll do.
Nice. That's, actually, you know what? I think that's probably the most appropriate place to start because I know you're very successful in what you do. And this is going to sound very, very poorly researched on my part, but I think it'll make for a much better and more organic conversation. Can you explain what do you actually do?
Question. Um, so in essence, I am a consultant that advises organisations on sales process.
Mhm.
My majority of what I do though is I'm a managing director for a really fast growing SaaS or technology based solution in the legal technology space. So I look after a team of four in Europe.
Yeah.
But really, I look after kind of the rest of the world. For a long time, it was just me.
Yeah.
And so over the last 30 days, I've hired three people to kind of support that growth of this business that I work for.
That's awesome. I love that. You look after the rest of the world.
Rest of the world, yeah, it really is. So
Why can't they do it themselves? Somebody has to like come in and clean. Well, I'm glad it's you looking after the rest of the world. So,
well, I'm not sure that's a good thing. So they have a really big presence in North America because obviously that's where a lot of revenue is driven from, and lots of private equity is back from North America. But yeah, so the rest of the world, the best way to kind of technology adoption is always kind of North America first, and then obviously you
yeah.
have that kind of bell curve, and then it kind of actually follows the world, if it makes sense. So you have like North America, then us, Europe, Asia Pac, and then kind of rest of the world. So we're in a good spot.
Okay. Well, I think one of the reasons, other than your amazing like background story, which we'll get into, other than that reason, the focus for getting you on was because of this amazing outlook that you have on life and how you've been able to achieve what you have, and also the fact that you're in a sector which I feel like right now has gone through such a crazy transformation because of what's happened, with the coronavirus and the lockdown and stuff. So it would be great to hear for people listening who might be interested specifically in maybe looking for another job or looking to grow their business, to hear your thoughts on how right now people should be thinking with a business mindset.
Yeah, so actually, I'm a big believer in kind of trying to adopt or adapt to what's happening in the world, rather than staying kind of in your swim lane. Is to try and adjust yourself to kind of what's happening and be sympathetic or empathetic to that process.
Yeah,
Because the reality is, we would be doing this in person, yeah, if it
yeah,
wasn't for the world that we live in at the moment.
hmm,
Um, and everyone's in the same boat for that. So, like, this is my fifth Zoom or web conference call today.
yeah,
Uh, and so there is a certain element of fatigue. So you don't want to just get pestered by Rob the sales guy if you're
hmm,
doing these all day, stuck in a bedroom or sitting on your bed or stuck in the garage as I was for a long time. So certainly from a sales process, you need to be more empathetic to people's current situation,
yeah,
because people aren't just doing the 9 to 5 slog and sitting in an office, and a call is a welcome kind of distraction. So when definitely speaking to my team, I try and get us to be a bit more kind of informal in the approach,
hmm,
which is a bit more different from the traditional kind of dear sir or madam. It's a bit more kind of like hi, and relaxing the language a little bit just to kind of make people feel more comfortable, because ultimately you're doing calls with dogs barking, and but funny thing is, it's a real settler. Yeah, it's like a real,
yeah,
like I speak to like chiefs of legal in like multi-billion-dollar companies, and they're just sitting there and their daughter is walking to go and get some cereal or something, and it
yeah,
really just humanizes the whole process. So yes, obviously what's happening in the world is tragic and sad and harrowing, but it's there are silver linings to it,
yeah.
which I think is important for people to embrace as well.
Okay, I love that. It's about being flexible and rolling with the punches.
Yeah, for sure.
Cool. There's a lot of people now who are out of work and they might be thinking about starting a business or they might be thinking about a new direction for their life. Do you kind of see where people should be putting their attention to? Have you got like a kind of not like a crystal ball, but almost an idea, specifically because you're in technology and you're in sales and you're at like working with the North Americans at the forefront. Do you have an idea of where people should be putting their attention?
I think it's so someone uses the kind of the term kind of skilling up.
Hmm.
So I'm a big believer in kind of personal or professional development, because the real issue that's going to happen is that there's a huge pool of people, lots of talented people
Hmm.
that are now looking for jobs, and so the traditional differentiators aren't there anymore, because everyone, like the most intelligent people, there's going to be loads of them. So you
Yeah.
need to think on how you can differentiate yourselves from that market. I'm always a big believer in falling back on kind of metrics. Like everyone loves a metric. Like everyone's LinkedIn profile page always starts with, I am highly motivated and I love work and I like doing this. But that's just white noise now, especially in the
Yeah.
world we live in. So a real differentiator is kind of, what have you been doing? How has that improved the business? And what are those metrics that are assigned to that process? Additionally, it's that extracurricular stuff is also important. So like there's lots of free, I think it's almost like Harvard and those guys are doing kind of like, you can do training programs and doing things of that nature. And like, so my sister got furloughed, and so she did a project management course, for example.
Yeah.
So I'm a huge believer, if you don't come out of this kind of quarantine without any self improvement, you're going to struggle, because there
Yeah.
are going to be people that have been doing that for sure.
Yeah, that's really important, and I think what's amazing about that is there's definitely something about self-development that's part of your own biography, if I'm not mistaken, and maybe this would be a good place to talk about like how we both went to school together and how we were when we were teenagers messing around to how you've become this very successful business person, father of two, husband, friend, and like alpha dude. So it would be great to hear about yeah. um, so it would be great to hear a little bit about about your story if you don't mind sharing some of that.
That's fine. So so I think I've known you since I was like 6. So we go
Yeah.
back a long way. I'm 32 now, so that's That's a long time. But yeah, so like I suppose I always struggled at education to start with because I'm quite dyslexic and dyspraxic and everything in between. Um,
What? Sorry, but before we, what does
yeah.
that mean? What do those two things mean?
Oh, dyslexic means you struggle with the common process of spelling and understanding of words, and so
Hmm.
like even now I couldn't tell you what a noun is, but it's just a reality, yeah. And so education really struggles in this traditional practice of understanding how different people and I suppose, different people learn,
Hmm.
uh, because the traditional school metrics and practices effectively kind of write, cover, repeat, write, cover, repeat, write, cover, repeat until you learn something. However, I and other people just can't learn that way.
Hmm.
Um, so you have to think of other ways. So if you're like a visual learner, how do you actually embed those kind of methodologies into education? That's probably a whole other conversation to be
Yeah.
had. But but to say I'm not a failure of our educational process, but it didn't support me at all.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
and I only was kind of I don't really like the term, but diagnosed as dyslexia when I went to university. So it's a real kind of not great shout on kind of my upbringing from an education perspective that wasn't called earlier.
Yeah.
Um, but so I really kind of struggled through education. Didn't really know what I wanted to do. Um, wasn't the most confident boy in the world. Didn't have loads of friends. Had you guys, but and then went to university, and then that's where kind of it all started. Really, kind of my professional mindset.
Hmm.
So in my third year, we had a placement near Bournemouth. Excuse me, and um, and I went to go and work for Hasbro, the toy manufacturer.
Yeah.
Um, and I still didn't know what I wanted to do, but I was doing marketing badly. And then, funny enough, when I was at Hasbro, we went to there was a kind of expo, and I was just the placement guy, so I was just supporting the sales team in that process. The sales guy didn't actually turn up, and so I had to spend the whole day kind of pitching Hasbro's new toys to effectively publications and media and PR and all that kind of stuff.
Wow.
And that's actually where it all kind of triggered for me because I was just like, I actually really enjoy doing this. Because sales as a concept is just not taught or talked about
Hmm.
at all in any education.
Yeah.
You almost have to kind of fall into it, like the basic, like history, German, English, all that kind of good stuff. Yeah, that's taught, but sales as a module is just never discussed or talked about. So you kind of fall into it. And I think the crazy thing about that is everything everyone does is certain salesy related.
Yeah.
Even if you're like a technician, you still have to sell to the people in the business what you want to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I did that, and then thought sales was what I wanted to go and do. I then went to work for after I graduated at university. I went to work for a large real estate or estate agency in London, which was brutal. So I worked kind of 6 days a week, doing 200 to 300 cold calls a day, and it was a real kind of eye opener and kind of cutting your teeth of kind of sales practice and the basics of it. At the time, it sucked. Like I hated it, but especially to start with, I was making. I think the statistic. I actually wrote down the statistics before this, and in the first 6 weeks, I did kind of 5,400 calls, 2,500 emails, had sold nothing. Yeah, so like that's tough going. But and then really what happened is I think it's a stepping stone or kind of I don't know a moment in time, and you feel like you're taking something seriously, and then you actually do take it seriously, and then there's a whole different mindset to it. So then I started trying to self-educate myself on the market, improving my kind of acumen, talking to people on the phone, improving that process, becoming a bit more of a bastard in the kind of my kind of closing,
Yeah.
um, and then it kind of ticked up from there. So then I kind of became the number one sales guy in the estate agency, kind of across London, and then spoke to a recruiter actually after 2 years of doing that, and said that I wanted to go and sell something more complicated. And in fact, the reality is I want to go sell something that's going to make me more money. So I got into technology and data storage and things of that nature. And then I worked for a company that was based out of Australia for 2 years. Um, got a better understanding. So I was their first sales guy in London. So I still didn't really know what I was doing, but kind of finding my way. And then I moved to another company and kind of headed up their team, built a kind of internal sales team, kind of sales, cold calling and things and generating revenue. Then I had another conversation and said, I want to sell again something more complicated. Then worked in a world called eDiscovery, which no one would have heard of. But then this kind of the next ticking point for me was we partner with the company I work for now, and excuse me, the I effectively pitched to them that they should start a practice in Europe,
Hmm.
and this discussion with their CEO went back and forth for about 2 years,
Yeah.
just under. And then all of a sudden, one day, they called me up and said, "Can you come to Houston next week?" And I was just like, "I've got a 2-month-old, so I can't do that next week, but I'll come the week after." So I flew to Houston, presented to their board, did a presentation on why they should open an office in Europe, and why I'm kind of the guy for that process. And then didn't hear anything in the Uber on the way back to the airport. I thought it was rubbish. I called Elise and was like, "This just went so bad." But yeah, then they called up and said, "Yeah, we want kind of to engage with you." And I said, "Yeah, that's fine, but I'm quite keen to be independent." So obviously, I'm in charge of my own destiny and things like that. So we kind of negotiated out those contracts, and I've been doing what I've been doing now for 2 years. So that's kind of nutshell of how we've got to here.
That's awesome. There's so many areas of that story that I'd love to like dig into and explore, but I think because we touched on the self-development theme, let's focus on there. What's interesting is from that story, it sounds like the process, you didn't rush it. You took your time to learn who you were and what you were good at and what you enjoyed, and then you explored those avenues. And I remember when we were at school, I know obviously like, our little like clique wasn't necessarily the most academically advanced, and we might not have been the most athletically advanced as well. But now, like, one thing I know about you is you do take pride in looking after your physique and looking after your health as well. So could you tell me a little bit about that process throughout that timeline? Is that something that you also started realizing was important, or did you like how did that sort of start happening?
I think it's an interesting because everything is kind of interrelated to each other. So your mindset is really driven by kind of like self-confidence and health.
Hmm.
Because we all wake up one like if we've eaten bad like of an evening and you wake up feeling rubbish the next day, that kind of alters your mindset for that day.
Yeah.
Um, and and so like I'm a big believer in kind of functional fitness. So like I don't want to get to kind of 50 and not be able to run around or anything like that. And so like I just really focus on kind of I suppose the core exercises which kind of support the body kind of like and I just do kettlebell swings every day, basically what I do. But they are all interrelated. So if you have a positive mindset, that's obviously going to drive your mentality in work.
Hmm.
And if you and generally if you just feel better about yourself, you can drive for longer. So like I'm a huge believer in, so I really hate the term work smarter not harder,
Hmm.
because I just don't think that means anything. I just my theory towards life is you just have to work harder than everyone else.
Yeah.
um, and that's maybe because of where I've come from, and like my struggles through education. But um, if I am working harder and longer than other people, you generally generate more opportunity for yourself,
Yeah.
be it in kind of work and professionalism outlay, or being kind of at like social or networking. If you put more effort into it than other people, you're generally going to deem more results from that process.
Hmm.
And I think that can be seen from what I've been doing. Like I'm definitely not the finished article or anything of that nature yet. But the more effort I put into stuff, the more opportunities do present themselves. Like us talking today is a great example of that. Yeah. And yeah, just keep on pushing is my general mantra.
Yeah.
Um, like some days, and again, as coming back to what you mentioned about taking your time, I think there's a huge drive, and I think it's peer pressure as well, that right, you're out of school, like, have you made £1 million yet? Yeah.
Mm,
So and I think that's not healthy at all.
mhm,
It does take time, and I think if you look at the statistics, like 90% of millionaires are like 50 plus. Yeah.
mhm.
And people just don't really kind of understand that concept. They're just like, right, I'm on to the next thing, on to the next thing, on to the next thing. Whereas actually, time and effort is a thing you have to put in over time.
Yeah.
It's not a thing that just happens overnight. And I think the impatience of people is a real issue these days. And I think that kind of lends itself to kind of instant gratification that obviously we kind of get off like phones and things like that. So
Yeah.
it's a bit more of an old school approach, probably, but you know, that's what I do.
No, I like it. And wherever I hear anyone give really solid advice, it always takes into account, like for example, with investment, it's always play the long game. It's not about like quick bucks. And if there is anyone who has the formula for making quick bucks, then that, like, I'd like to know who it is, because it's like it's all about working hard, like you said, working harder than everyone else. Um, so I love that. I think the other interesting thing that you touched on was about how sales is something that's not taught properly, and you kind of had to figure it out uh, and just sort of explore that until you found yourself in the right groove. Obviously, this podcast is called Science of Soul, and the idea behind it is that we look at all the things around us that help us to be the best we can, and faith plays a big part in that. So Islamically, one of the things that's really important, kind of related to what you're talking about with sales, is there's a big emphasis on being I think the phrasing is like being an honest merchant, because obviously, back in the
Sure.
days, they didn't have like stock traders.
Be an
Yeah.
honest IT professional. Yeah,
Yeah. But yeah, so they'd use things like being an honest merchant, and they'd use things like, weighing scales to like weigh a product and make sure that the weight that you use is calibrated properly, so that you're not cheating people. So where do you see the parallel in what you do with doing sales and doing business, but in a way that's honest and ethical?
I think it's really easy. Like, if you're not, you're going to get found out. It's a really simple thing.
Mhm.
You might not get found out today, you might not get found out tomorrow, but at some point, the things that you do perhaps dishonestly are eventually going to catch up with you, because obviously you tell a lie, then you have to have a lie to support that lie, and so on and so on.
Yeah.
And basically, like, I generally think it's because I'm not clever enough to work out that process. It's just easier to be transparent.
Yeah.
Yeah? And I think, but also, and sometimes I kind of rub people up the wrong way because I'm overly transparent, but it just makes life a lot easier if you have an ethical base to start from. Um, and I think it makes you more at peace with yourself, certainly when you're kind of delivering kind of, I don't know. So, like, if I'm selling something, I'm always overly honest about the deliverables that we'll provide. And if
Mhm.
it's very easy if someone says, "Do you do this?" for you to go, "Yes, we do that." Yeah, because obviously it helps the sales process. But I purposely always will be overly honest. So some people's cringe at it, but I'm happy to say to people like, "No, we don't do that," and "No, we don't do that," because eventually, if you sell it, then they're going to be like, "Where is this?" And you're like, "Ah." And then you're starting that relationship on the wrong foot. So I think and that's why sometimes I have grief with like media and
Mhm.
film, things like that, there's because like a really hardworking traditional person who doesn't lie and is very honest is a very boring film. Yeah.
Yeah.
So so oh, this guy woke up and then he went to work and he worked till 7 and then he saw his kids and went to bed. That's slightly different to Wolf of Wall Street. Yeah. So I
Yeah.
get, but I think things get over glamorized, and I think it's important for people to be true to themselves in whatever they do, um, be it business, religion, your personal life, whatever. But it's certainly a thing. Like I'm not kind of religious by mindset, but I'm
Mhm.
open to the fact that there's teachings, those processes that you should kind of model your life on,
Yeah.
kind of morals and processes behind that. Um, but what I try and do, and maybe it's kind of what I've been learning through reading, is extrapolating that information and then working with that from more of a business or a technical standpoint. and then
Yeah.
how I can lean on them from a professional standpoint as well, not always from a spiritual place, if that makes sense.
Sure. I think that's really interesting point that you're making is about reading and like taking that knowledge and then applying it to the areas of your life. Can you tell us a little bit about the things that you're reading now, or anything that you've learned recently that has been quite impactful, or something that you kind of implemented in your life or business recently?
So what am I reading at the moment? I'm actually reading. So I also probably have a bit of an addiction to buying business books. So Elise has like banned me from buying them.
Yeah.
But so I'm reading Bob Iger. He's the CEO of Disney. So I'm reading his biography at the moment. And the really interesting thing about him, and I think it's an important thing for people to know, is that he's not a dot-com millionaire or anything. Don't get me wrong, he's the head of Disney, so he makes loads of money.
Yeah.
But he worked for I think he worked for NBC, who then got bought by Disney. But he's a lifer, so he's always worked at the same institution, and effectively worked his way up from the bottom. So he's all and it effectively has shown you that kind of that graft and that dedication to a single process has got him out on top. And obviously, lots of things have had to happen for that to happen. Like the old CEO kind of got kicked out, and there was kind of grievances around Disney animation, how it was rubbish compared to Pixar, and the relationship with Steve Jobs is really it's an interesting read. But what I try and do, because obviously, if you like search Amazon for business books, you get like a million hits, yeah.
Hmm.
So I I do think that there is a tipping point between reading things that are from a self-improvement perspective, reading things that are going to improve what you do versus just reading a biography that is just no kind of no doesn't resonate with you. So what I've tried to learn is either quit a book if I know it's not going to do anything for me, which
Hmm.
is hard because obviously in a traditional novel people just power through.
Yeah.
Uh, and but also to you can Google it, but there's better ways to read books from a business perspective. So kind of scanning the index, then flicking to the things that resonate with you most, noting them. I spoke to Jim about this, but is if you can take away one principle, just like even if it's a sentence, then I think that's a win. Yeah,
Yeah.
because that sentence may stay with you forever,
Yeah.
or might raise its head at a later date.
Hmm.
Because I think, and it's about kind of planting as many seeds as you can is kind of a good analogy. Yeah.
Yeah.
So the more I can read and the more that I understand about business and the world around me, it may not affect me today, it may not affect me tomorrow or in a month or a year, but as long as if I keep on doing it and I do it enough, then they will support and help me improve as a person, both professionally and personally. So so you almost got it. It's an investment, yeah. Effectively, the best way to think about it.
Yeah.
So that why are you smiling?
I was smiling because I'm gonna kind of I'm gonna like pivot the conversation a little bit, because I think this is all brilliant. You know, the fact that you have developed yourself into being able to, you're what's the term? You're an autodidact. You're able to learn your own way now,
Mhm.
and you like looking after yourself physically, and you've done so well in terms of your business. But ultimately, all of that is, I'm not going to say meaningless, but
Yeah,
it's so nice to be able to share it with someone like your family and your kids. And so I was kind of smiling because I was thinking, wow, I'm talking to Bob, and he's doing so well. But I'd love to know about, you've been married to Elise for a few years now, and you've got two little ones. How has that aspect of your life impacted your outlook?
made it way more stressful. The um,
She's not
I,
going to listen to this. Don't worry.
yeah,
We have like 10
uh,
listeners, so it's all good.
it's all good, I'm sure. I think the reality is it just makes me it recenters your purpose is probably the best way to put it. So like young men are just a nightmare. Yeah, we're all self-centered. You're all kind of you don't have a compass of any sort. You just kind of just day to day. Whereas now, kind of, I have responsibilities and people responsible for, um, and so that really does change your mindset with regards to being the deliverables you provide. So I overuse business terms in everything I do, so I do apologize. But my responsibilities and my deliverables to my family ultimately are more important,
Yeah.
than my work life. Because
Yeah.
ultimately, if I get struck by something bad tomorrow, like you don't wake up and be like, "Oh, work," You're like, "Oh, I want to see my loved ones, or I want to speak to these people." And I think that's a true reflection on what's happening in the world today as well. Is as a friendship group, I think we've got infinitely more closer,
Mm-hmm.
weirdly, but yeah, but from the family side of things, yeah. So it's it's a case that I have to be more focused in what I do, because ultimately, if you have no one to be responsible for, you could just either push it later or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of make a promise with Belize that I'm always home and ready to do bath time. So that is kind of my commitment to the family, is
Yeah.
that I was there for bath time. And then if I have to do a lot of traveling, which is obviously not what's happening in the world at the moment, I try and reduce it to kind of 2 overnight stays at maximum.
Yeah.
Uh, and because obviously my it's a weird dynamic, work and personal life, because obviously work underpins life you can give to your family,
Yeah.
but in turn, if you give too much to work, then you miss your family growing up, and everything that's in between, in kind of engaging with that. So it is a tricky, and it's a continuous balance, which is always out of kilter. So I will always work with my I'll always do work, and then I'd work too hard, and then I have to realign myself, and then I'll spend too much with my family, and then I obviously have to kind of realign myself. So it's a continuous level of realigning myself, and I think that's just something you always will do.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but also, and some people will disagree with this probably, but I actually I do enjoy work. So it's I do enjoy what I do, and I do enjoy the principles of work effectively, and I think it's an honest thing for people to kind of be committed to, um, especially because maybe we've seen it more in in more recent times, but the more successful a person is, the more that they can contribute to society. And be it either employing people. So, like the company I work for, we've employed 3 additional people. So that's 3 people that are being supported for a company that has been successful. Be it to my family, be it to the ability for me to provide or contribute more to charity, be it to talk more to people like yourself and have these kind of discussions. But I do think that it can be a tool for good, not necessarily always about corporate greed, if that makes sense.
Absolutely, yeah. I think what's great about what you've said is that it's ultimately when you have purpose and you have something to drive towards, then everything can sort of lend itself to everything else. So work can lend itself to family, family lends itself to work, and you've mentioned like work can also, and business and success can lend itself to doing good in society. And so I guess uh, this conversation, I think for me, was sparked by something that you brought up on our friendship group, on the WhatsApp group, a couple of weeks ago, and that's what's happening now with the race relations in America, but also around the world, with the death of George Floyd, and it was I found it honestly I found it really moving when you posted that. A lot of the times I've got people who send these kind of forwarded messages, and I'm not a cynical person, but I get them a lot, and I'm like, oh, another person who's kind of being like a keyboard warrior, trying to, trying to. It's like value signaling, like letting people know how great they are. But when you posted that, I thought, wow, this Robert really doesn't need to post about this, but he's clearly been moved enough to, to say something. And you were saying it in our friendship group, which to me said, you're not doing it for any kind of recognition, because it's, we're mates. We can have banter, and we can take the piss out of each other and stuff. But you did that, and so I thought, wow, this is awesome, and I wanted to ask you about it. So if you don't mind, like, what was the thought process that kind of got you to send that post?
I think it's because, like as you said, like I'm quite a stereotypical bloke. So so like, and yeah, like we all have silly jokes and things within our WhatsApp groups and chat. But I think when reality hits, like it's the common man or woman who needs to kind of have a position. So I think lots of people talk about it as like, to have a position is just as bad as kind of no position at all. Yeah, I got that wrong, but and I think it's important for people to kind of sometimes cut away the crap even to your friends, to have and tell them where you stand on something. Like, I think the benefit we have as a group is that we are, if you look across the spectrum from maybe a political standpoint, we are kind of very stretched. So we have kind of very socialist people to maybe on the farthest right we go, but not too far right, but from a capitalist perspective, yeah.
Yeah.
But I just wanted to express the fact that we all have the underlining same principles towards how people should be treated, yeah.
Hmm.
Uh, Regardless of what our mentality is towards, I don't know, political standing or
Hmm.
business, how that should engage. And I just thought it was important for you guys to know that, firstly, I think it's okay to say you have white privilege if we went in down that route,
Yeah.
um, because ultimately, I as a person didn't dictate who I am, or my race or my creed or white or wherever I am, and it's okay to acknowledge that fact.
Yeah.
And then, but it's also important for you to then take that as an onus and then make some decisions on how you engage with your society.
Yeah.
Like for example, like I didn't go to any kind of demonstrations or anything like that, but I think but the things and how I engage with society, and if I can reflect on, say, two people within our group, and
Hmm.
they change slightly how they engage with other people, it's kind of that degree of separation. Yeah. So if I can better support and look after people in my society, of all races, um, then hopefully someone else can do it, and then someone else can do it, and someone else can do it. So I don't pretend that it's about changing the world, but it's, if you can change your point 0.0000001 percentage, then that is an important thing for you to own. That's kind of my opinion on it.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think sometimes, especially when we're on social media, it can get we can get a little bit wrapped up in the idea that we are going to change the world and we're going to do this and do that with very like minute input. But actually, what you're saying is, have like take big strides to actually make small change that can be meaningful and that can build on the foundation of big change over time. Um, I think one thing for me in my life that's changed my perspective is wanting to do better and wanting to do more for society because of my kids. And I know you've got two little girls now. What do you think? What do you think the world that they grow up is going to look like? Because things seem really kind of divided now.
Yeah, it's I do. So I try and think about things in kind of a diplomatic way. Let's try and say that, because I do think that things are happening in the world, but I do think that our media sensationalizes processes and fans flames,
Yeah,
um, and so you can only hope for the good or the best, yeah.
yeah,
And so I do honestly hope that the world that we leave is better than the world that we entered. And that's kind of, and if you have that mentality, I think that the world will be okay.
hmm,
I generally think, like, it's difficult, obviously, because there will be two young women, and obviously there's that whole other world going on between kind of have it, the glass ceiling of women's ability to kind of get into the boardroom and
hmm,
fair pay salaries and things of that. And I think that world is slowly turning. But I'm just hoping that everyone has the same focus on all of these things once this COVID world has ended,
yeah,
um, because effectively everything, because obviously we are fed our news by multi corporations owned by Rupert Murdoch, that that I'm hoping that the things that were important before this kind of shut down are still important after and haven't just been forgotten.
yeah,
Uh, and so the best thing I can do is to effectively give those girls the best ability in life. So like I'm quite keen for them to go to coding camp and things like that to kind of skill them up in areas where they would see competitive advantage. Yeah, because like if you're a female coder at the moment, you can pretty much ask your price, when it comes to kind of, because obviously people have drives for balancing men and women in anything, um, and and maybe this is because I try and think of things again, business and commercial minded. Um, I basically, depending on what they want to do, if they don't care what they want to do, I actually just want them to do something that's going to pay them a boatload of money. Because if they don't mind what they do, then they should do something then that's going to give them the freedom to go do other things. Yeah.
yeah,
And that's why I'm not always sure that things like a history master, Nick and Coley, is is the best thing to do because
Sick burn, bro.
yeah, because ultimately, what I don't understand how that's going to improve your your position in life, but that's just an opinion.
Sure.
So yeah, so it's definitely to gear those girls up to be kind of know who they are, give themselves the best ability to go and do what they want to do, but ultimately kind of don't take any shit. That's kind of where we're trying to rear them to be effectively.
Yeah, I think what's really awesome hearing you talk like that is how you're someone who as a youngster growing up, education might have been difficult and confidence might not have been a natural asset, but now you're making sure that your little ones are endowed with those gifts of having confidence and going after education in a way that's going to suit them, and that they're not going to be kind of like they're going to be they're going to maximize their potential by choosing what best fits them. So I think that's awesome. On that note, like, would you have advice for people who struggle with confidence? Like, what would you say to them to try and give them some words to maybe change their perspective or try and learn something?
It's so difficult. The I would say it's just baby steps. Yeah.
Mhm.
The you I think the main problem again coming back to the world is like everyone's just like bang change overnight and then you'll be fine. But I think reading helps. I think it's okay to be a geek now as well, which is great. It's almost cool to be a geek, yeah.
Yeah.
But I think reading kind of fiction and non-fiction can help that kind of process, and it's just to take those baby steps each day to kind of change a little bit of that kind of your mindset, um, be it talking to someone or going outside or doing something, going to talk to someone, changing careers as well can help. And I think that's what helped me with confidence. But again, everyone's different to how they can effectively take that on.
Cool. Well, Robert, like, I'm super grateful for this time that you've given me, and I think this is probably like last week. We had a podcast with Shazad Hanif, who does. He's a personal coach, and that was an amazing podcast. And then this podcast has also been a journey into self development and bettering yourself. And I have to say, like, this is probably my new favorite podcast out of all the ones we've done so far, because it's
So
been
out of
such.
two, this is your favorite one.
No,
Okay.
no, no, no. It's out of like we're on episode I think 15. This is episode 15.
What?
So like those two, this one and the last one are like the top out of all of them. So I think there's so many areas for people to learn from and implement in their own lives. And ultimately, the thing that I take away from this is that the journey to success is long and should be taken with patience and not rushed, and it can be enjoyed because you've got two beautiful kids and a wife who you enjoy the journey with, and it's all with kind of a purpose in mind and not just like meaningless get rich or die trying or whatever is.
No, I think it's true. The and the reason why I wanted to do this as well is that I think it's important for people to talk who are on the journey as well.
Yeah.
So like so many people who do podcasts and things like that, they are kind of the finished article, yeah.
Mm.
So like they're like, oh, I sold my company for $1 billion. Like, why haven't you? So I just wanted to have the ability to kind of just talk about, hey, it's okay to be in middle management, sort of thing. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um, and then have that conversation. So this has been great. Thank you so much, Jabir.
Thank you. And do you have any kind of closing messages or anything?
No, no, no.
Okay.
The, no, go
What were
on.
you gonna
Sorry.
say? No, go. What were you gonna say?
I don't know really. Just I suppose it's kind of work hard or die trying. There you go.
Yes, I like that. Work hard or die trying. And where can people, if you want people to follow you, I don't know if I want to like bombard you with people like chasing you with emails and stuff, but where do you send people for your socials?
My
Like
socials. I knew you were
yeah.
going to say socials. I actually the only thing I do is LinkedIn. So
Cool.
just search my name and I'm sure I'll turn up.
Wicked. All right, man.
Yeah,
Thanks
mate.
very much. I guess I'll see you on the WhatsApp group.
Thanks so much, Bear. Appreciate it, mate.